It was well past midnight when the knock came, a sharp, insistent rap that cut through the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I remember thinking how strange it was, a delivery at such an hour, especially for someone like her who rarely ordered anything online. She had been curled up with a book, the soft glow of her reading lamp the only light in the living room, and the sudden sound made her jump, a small gasp escaping her lips. She hesitated, peering through the peephole, seeing only the silhouette of a man holding a package, his face obscured by the porch light's glare. Against her better judgment, she unlatched the door, leaving the chain on, and cracked it open just enough to sign the digital pad he offered. His eyes, even in the dim light, seemed unnervingly still, devoid of the usual weariness of a late-night worker. As she handed back the device, he didn't move. Instead, with a sudden brutal shove, he forced the door inward, the chain snapping with a loud crack that echoed like a gunshot in the silent house. She stumbled backward, her heart leaping into her throat. The package, a plain brown box, tumbled from his grasp as he stepped over the threshold. It hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud, and the flimsy cardboard tore open, spilling its contents. Not clothes, not electronics, but a chilling array of tools, a pry bar, a set of lockpicks, and a heavy-duty flashlight. The sight of them, glinting under the hallway light, sent a cold wave of dread through her. This wasn't a delivery, it was an invasion, meticulously planned and now terrifyingly real. Instinct took over. Her gaze darted to the kitchen, where a heavy cast-iron skillet lay on the stove, still warm from dinner. She snatched it, the familiar weight a small comfort in the face of overwhelming terror, and without a second thought, she bolted. Her only thought was the garage, a space filled with tools and potential escape routes. The door to the garage was just off the kitchen, and she burst through it, slamming it shut behind her, the sound a desperate plea for time. She fumbled for the garage door opener, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped it. But then, a chilling realization washed over her. The intruder hadn't chased her immediately. There was no frantic pounding on the door. Instead, a soft click from the kitchen, followed by the distinct sound of a deadbolt engaging. He was locking her in. And then, a low, calm voice, almost conversational, drifted through the thin door. "You know, the back door to the yard is usually unlocked, but I took care of that already." It was then I knew, with a sickening certainty, that he wasn't just breaking in. He knew her home, perhaps better than she did. The car alarm shrieked, a piercing, chaotic symphony that bounced off the concrete walls of the garage. She'd slammed her palm onto the steering wheel, hoping the sudden deafening noise would disorient him, buy her precious seconds. While the blare echoed, she scrambled, grabbing a heavy wrench from the workbench and a coil of thick rope. Her mind raced, trying to remember every hidden nook, every forgotten tool. She could hear him now, a faint rhythmic thudding from the kitchen, methodical and unhurried, as if he were simply walking through his own home, oblivious to the alarm's frantic cry. She plunged the garage into darkness, yanking the emergency power cord, hoping to gain an advantage. The sudden blackness was absolute, thick and suffocating, but it didn't seem to faze him. A soft, almost amused chuckle drifted from the kitchen, followed by the distinct click-clack of a flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. He was moving with an eerie confidence, his light sweeping across the walls, illuminating familiar objects as if he knew exactly where everything was. A sudden, sharp crack from the living room made her jump, a sound like splintering wood, and she knew he was making his way through the house, systematically dismantling her defenses. Desperation clawed at her throat. She fumbled for the emergency release on the garage door, but it was jammed, rusted shut from years of disuse. Her breath hitched as she heard a faint scraping sound, closer now, from the wall shared with the kitchen. He was right there on the other side, perhaps listening, perhaps just waiting. She pressed herself against the cold concrete. The wrench clutched tight, her eyes straining in the darkness, trying to pierce the oppressive blackness that surrounded her. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, became a potential threat. Then a low, guttural moan echoed from the far corner of the garage, a sound that wasn't human yet filled with an agonizing despair. She froze, her blood turning to ice. It was coming from behind the stack of old moving boxes, a place she rarely ventured. Her flashlight, a small, weak beam from her phone, trembled in her hand as she slowly, agonizingly, turned it towards the sound. The light fell upon a small, grimy doll, its porcelain face cracked, one glass eye missing, lying half-buried beneath a tattered blanket. But it wasn't the doll that made her gasp. It was the faded blood-like stain on its dress, and the tiny skeletal hand clutching its leg protruding from the dirt floor. A voice, calm and chillingly close, spoke from the garage door. "You found him. He's been waiting for me to come back for him. He always loved this house even after they buried him in the crawl space." The flashlight beam from the intruder's hand cut through the darkness, illuminating his face. It wasn't a stranger's face. It was the face of the man from the old photograph on her mantelpiece, the one she'd always assumed was a distant relative of the previous owners. But his eyes, hollow and ancient, held a terrifying recognition, a silent accusation. He wasn't there for a break-in. He was there for a reunion, and she was merely an inconvenient obstacle in his long-awaited return to a secret grave. The woman's scream was a raw, guttural sound, tearing through the garage as the intruder's flashlight beam settled on his own face, revealing the impossible truth. He was the man from the photograph, the one who had vanished decades ago, the one whose story was whispered in hushed tones by the town's oldest residents. But his eyes, those ancient knowing eyes, weren't just old. They were dead, yet filled with a chilling purpose. He didn't move towards her, his gaze fixed instead on the small skeletal hand protruding from the earth, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. I felt a strange pull, a sense of recognition, as if a long dormant part of me was stirring. He knelt slowly, his movements fluid and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. The woman, still clutching the wrench, backed away, her breath coming in ragged gasps. He reached out, his fingers, long and pale, brushing against the tiny bones. A low, almost reverent whisper escaped him. "It's time, little one. Time to come home." The air in the garage grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, and a sudden icy draft swept through the space, making the woman's hair stand on end. She let out a small whimper, her eyes darting wildly, searching for an escape that wasn't there. Suddenly, the intruder's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto the woman. His smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. He lunged, not at her, but past her, towards the workbench. The woman screamed again, a high-pitched shriek of pure terror, and swung the wrench wildly, connecting with something hard and metallic. A sickening clang echoed, followed by a grunt of pain, but it wasn't from him. It was from her. She stumbled, clutching her arm, a dark stain blooming on her sleeve. He had moved with impossible speed, not even touching her. Yet she was hurt, as if the very air around him had become a weapon. He returned to the skeletal hand, ignoring her cries, and began to dig with his bare hands, the dirt crumbling away to reveal more tiny bones, a small, fragile ribcage. The woman, slumped against the wall, watched in horrified fascination as he carefully unearthed the rest of the small skeleton, placing each bone gently into the now empty delivery box. He worked with a tender, almost loving care, as if he were reuniting with a long-lost friend. The garage was silent again, save for the soft scraping of dirt and the woman's shallow, terrified breathing. As dawn approached, painting the sky with a faint, sickly gray light, he stood, the box cradled in his arms. He looked at the woman, her face pale and streaked with tears, and then his gaze drifted to the spot where the skeletal hand had been. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice no longer calm, but filled with a profound ancient relief. He can finally rest. And then he turned and walked out of the garage, leaving the door ajar. The woman didn't move, couldn't move. She just stared at the empty patch of earth, and then at the doll, its single glass eye seeming to stare back at her. I watched him go, a sense of peace settling over me, a peace I hadn't known in decades. He had finally come for me, and now I was truly free.